Hello and welcome to Wales Today. The headlines. Our two biggest cities are added to the local lockdown list. Tighter restrictions will come into force in both Cardiff and Swansea from Sunday evening.
The measures reflect the seriousness of the position, and we ask people to reflect on it in their own conduct and to avoid unnecessary contact with other people.
In Llandaff, new rules from tomorrow evening place parts of the town in lockdown. In total, around half the Welsh population will face new restrictions.
Described as a dark day for the workforce and for Wales, Ford's engine plant in Bridgend stops production after 40 years.
It can range from disappointment to upset to anger. I suppose everybody's gone through every emotion.
Rhiannon's anxiety means sometimes she's too scared to even shop for food. There's concern many like her are going hungry. And it's the end of an era for us here at BBC Cymru Wales.
A house for broadcasting.
On our very last programme from this building, we take a trip down memory lane ahead of the move to our new home. Good evening, noswaith. Cardiff and Swansea will be in lockdown by the end of this weekend. It follows a continuing rise in coronavirus cases, and it means 8 council areas across South Wales will be subject to further restrictions, including on travel and the suspension of extended households. Well, further west, Llandaff will be put into lockdown tomorrow evening. We'll be live in the town in just a moment, but first, here's Nick Pallett on the lockdown in our two biggest cities.
It's just over a fortnight since the first county in Wales, Cardiff, was put into local lockdown. Now residents in the capital, along with Swansea, face a similar fate. The Health Minister announced the further restrictions to curb the spread of the virus.
Local restrictions will also come in place in both Swansea and Cardiff from 6 p.m. on Sunday. That does not mean that people in Swansea and Cardiff should treat this weekend as a big blowout. The measures reflect the seriousness of the position, and we ask people to reflect on it in their own conduct and to avoid unnecessary contact with other people.
In Swansea, the impact will be far-reaching, especially for businesses who rely on tourism, like this popular cafe in Mumbles.
The fact that we're so close to the sea like this and in such a nice area like this, we rely a lot on the tourism factor, which boosts a lot of our sales. We get a lot of people, not just coming from areas in Wales like Neath or Talbot, but as well from England and stuff like that. We had people calling earlier who were coming from Somerset, arranged to come next week, but they can't come anymore.
The restrictions will be the same as in other counties under lockdown, with no one able to enter or leave without a reasonable excuse, and extended households unable to meet.
I think it's a great shame. I think it's particularly a great shame for young people who really haven't got much of a life at the moment.
Well, I think it's awful because I've got a big little family, you know, and
we won't be
it's going to be hard. Just won't be going anywhere. They won't be having anybody at the house.
To be honest, it's just part of life now, so yes, it is what it is, I guess.
Cafes and restaurants in Cardiff are also bracing themselves for tough times ahead.
I'm a family-run business. It's going to shatter me completely. I don't know what it's going to affect, as in I might have to close completely.
There's been a rapid rise in both cities over the last 7 days, with the number of cases per 100,000 rising to just over 46 in Cardiff and 63.6 in Swansea. With the capital facing a local lockdown by early Sunday evening, along with Wales' second city down the M4 in Swansea, and the other South Wales local authorities already facing restrictions, it now means more than 1.5 million people are affected. The rapid rise in the number of cases in Cardiff is linked to people meeting and mixing in each other's homes, socialising without social distancing, and there have been small clusters in workplaces.
I do think it's worth stressing, this is a very different situation from what we had back in March. The city remains open, you'll be able to go to shops, to restaurants, to pubs. What is changing is who you'll be able to do that with, and it's very important that you only do that in the company of people within your own household. So in effect, that bubble is broken.
The Welsh Government say they don't have any additional financial provision for businesses in areas of local coronavirus restrictions, and they say they're in discussions with the UK Government about further support.
What's really important now is that Welsh Government come forward with a support package for businesses that are going to be affected by this, and ultimately map out a future for the winter months, because if this is the new norm of constant lockdown, re-lockdown, that's going to be massively disruptive for everyday life in most communities.
Since a local lockdown was implemented in Caerphilly, cases have reduced significantly. It's hoped this will be replicated in other areas as more of us face tighter COVID restrictions. For the Welsh Government, the decision to impose the lockdown on the 367,000 residents of Cardiff has been a delicate balancing act between the health of the people and the fragile economy. What it means is you'll no longer be able to enter or leave the county except for education or work, and you can't go into the homes of anyone that you don't live with, even if they're your family, because that extended bubble has now gone. And it all comes into force on Sunday evening at 6 p.m. But Vaughan Gethinger says do not mean that treat this as the weekend as a big blowout. OK, Nick, thank you very much. Well, let's head west now to Llandaff, because tomorrow evening it'll become the first town in Wales to be put into lockdown. Llandaff has been linked to around 80% of recent coronavirus cases in Carmarthenshire. And our reporter Rachel Garside is there for us tonight. Rachel.
Thanks, Jen. Yes, I think it's important to emphasise that these new rules will affect large parts of Llandaff, but not the whole town, making this the first lockdown in Wales which affects a town rather than a whole local authority area. Now, today's announcement has come after confirmation there have been 85 positive cases in Llanelli over the last 7 days, and that compares to 24 cases for the rest of Carmarthenshire during the same period. So the new rules will affect people who live in 13 wards in Llanelli, and effectively it means they won't be allowed to travel in or out of what's been called the health protection zone. Although people are being asked to work from home if they can, but pupils and students will be allowed to go to school and college. But people I've spoken to today seem to be confused and angry about the new rules. Llanelli town centre was quiet today as news emerged of a local lockdown for parts of the town. Business owners say the new rules will seriously affect trade here.
We'd be goldfish bowls. We'd have local customers only. 60% plus of my trade is people from outside Llanelli. I'll have to live with that, but I'm not living with Carmarthen having their own way and Llanelli being on our own.
Cases of COVID have been rising steadily in Carmarthenshire, with 8 out of 10 new cases in Llanelli. Health officials have described it as a significant spread that is not in control. This will be the first time part of a town rather than a whole county will be in lockdown, a measure opposition politicians have been calling for as a way of tackling the spread of the virus in Wales.
It makes sense to me to keep those restricted areas as small as possible, because every time you bring in new restrictions, you affect people's livelihoods, you affect people's mental well-being, people's relationship with others.
People living in Llanelli say they understand the need for stricter measures, but that it'll only work if everyone complies.
I've had COVID. I was very mildly affected, so it didn't make a great impact on me. But, you know, I'm quite high risk anyway, and there are people who are taking the mick, really.
A lot of people just won't come into town. They'd be too scared to come out.
You have the few that haven't followed the rules, which is a shame, because it's affected everybody.
Public Health Wales officials are expecting numbers to continue rising in Llanelli over the coming week. 2 new testing sites have been opened here in the last few days in an effort to bring the virus under control in this part of West Wales. Now, the new restrictions for Llanelli will come into force from 6 o'clock tomorrow evening, and anyone who's concerned if they're affected needs to go on Carmarthenshire County Council's website, where there's a postcode finder which clearly marks which areas are affected. There's also a warning this evening that if cases here continue to rise, tighter restrictions will have to be put in place. Jen.
Rachel in Llandaff, thank you very much. 3 further deaths due to COVID-19 have been reported today by Public Health Wales, taking the total number in Wales now to 1,609. 320 new cases have also been confirmed, with the highest number in Rhondda-Cynon-Taf with 48. There have been 3,999 confirmed cases of coronavirus across Wales so far this month. 2 men will appear in court to face gross negligence manslaughter charges 3 years after a church collapsed in Cardiff, killing a worker inside. Geoffrey Plevy died when the Citadel Church in Splot collapsed in July 2017. Keith Young and Stuart Swain have been summoned to appear at Cardiff Magistrates Court next month. A group on Welsh independence appointed by Plaid Cymru has said 2 referendums should be held on the nation's future place in the United Kingdom. The group says that a Plaid government in the Senedd should hold an initial multi-choice referendum. This should then be used to persuade the UK government to agree to a referendum on independence. Workers have left Ford in Bridgend for the last time after the American car giant finished production at the site. The car engine plant has employed thousands over 40 years, and a union has described it as a dark day for the workforce and for Wales. Here's our business correspondent, Brian Meakin.
Ford workers have continued making engines under a cloud for the last 15 months, knowing the plant would close. 1,700 people worked there when the company announced the decision. Hundreds have already gone, many taking redundancy or retiring. For the 1,000 left, feelings are running high.
It can range from disappointment to upset to anger. I suppose everybody's gone through every emotion. There's different age elements within the plant. There's a category of people who have served 30, 35, 40 years, and they're going to go off and hopefully enjoy their retirement. But for the likes of me and a lot of other people who are in the category who need to go on and gain future employment, it's a difficult time.
The Unite Union says Ford wasn't honest with workers and made bad decisions.
When you actually look at what Ford could have done differently, they could have invested, they could have looked at the hybrid engine. This side in North Wales, where Toyota have built a hybrid engine, I think that's what Ford should have done, and invested in Wales to make sure that new hybrid engines are built here.
Bridgend is particularly reliant on manufacturing jobs compared to Wales as a whole. But replacing such highly paid, skilled work will be difficult. The local community will feel the impact of the closure too.
Well, I think it's really sad for the whole of the county, really, because the jobs it's not just Bridgend, it's far afield.
Bridgend needs any help it can get, I think, with jobs, and obviously people losing their jobs is not something you want to hear.
Ford were the best employers around here, and like when the pits closed, with this closing, this town will die.
Bridgend College has opened its doors to 150 Ford workers who are retraining to help find new employment.
The car industry is facing huge challenge and change, but we're determined in Wales to invest in those industries of tomorrow, and that's why we are investing in electrification programs within the car industry. That's why we're investing in other areas of manufacturing within South Wales and the whole of Wales to make sure we capture jobs that are associated with the industries of the future.
What we have to do in conjunction with Welsh Gov, it's another example of where collaboration is really important for the people of Bridgend, is come up with alternative ways of attracting investment and interest into the area, which will create long-term jobs.
As workers left for the last time, Ford's plant manager thanked the staff for their contribution to the company's success. The US car giant leaves behind funding to support small businesses and community projects. But as the sun sets on its presence in South Wales, it also leaves behind a shadow over what happens next for the local economy.
That was Brian Meakin reporting. Still to come on Wales Today. Rhiannon feels so anxious she sometimes can't leave the house, even to buy food. We hear how many like her are now going hungry.
And a fine and sunny weekend ahead, all thanks to high pressure, but it will be on the chilly side, with Sunday your best day. Stay with us for a full update.
A builder accused of murdering his wife's lover has told a court he only wanted to scare him and try to make his death look like a suicide because he panicked. The prosecution alleged 53-year-old Andrew Jones from Carmarthen posed as his wife to lure Michael O'Leary to Nantgaredig in order to shoot him. But Mr Jones says he was accidentally killed in a struggle. Rhys Williams reports.
The Crown spent almost 9 days setting out its case that Andrew Jones lured Michael O'Leary to this remote farm which he owned, shot him and then faked his suicide and burned his body. Today the court heard Andrew Jones's side of the story in full for the first time. He told the court that his wife had changed her mind over the affair after she realised the effect it was having on her family. Mr Jones said he then texted Mr O'Leary pretending to be his wife and took this rifle to meet him at Kincoid Farm because he wanted to scare him. Andrew Jones told the court that when Michael O'Leary arrived at his remote farm, he shot 2 or 3 times into the floor. I said to him, "Time for that chat now." Mr Jones said he then kicked Michael O'Leary in the face, knocking him unconscious. When he came around, Mr Jones said that Mike kept saying sorry, but that he was besotted with Rhiannon. He said the father of 3 then lunged at him and tried to grab his rifle. The gun, he said, went off accidentally, killing Michael O'Leary. Mr Jones said he then totally panicked, deciding to stage Mr O'Leary's suicide, saying he was trying to protect the O'Leary family from the affair. Mr Jones told the court he then took Mr O'Leary's body back to his yard behind his home here on Bronwydd Road before burning it. Mr Jones told the jury he said a few words before setting Mr O'Leary's body alight. He said he nipped down to the house to find a service from a funeral he'd been to recently, as he couldn't remember the Lord's Prayer off by heart. Asked by his barrister Kareem Khalil QC if he had any wish to kill his friend, however bitterly he felt about the affair, Mr Jones replied no, none at all. Mr Jones was also asked whether the discovery of a piece of Mr O'Leary's small intestine inside this rusty oil barrel at his builder's yard was because he wanted to keep any of Mr O'Leary's remains. No, replied Mr Jones, before adding that he had massive regrets about what happened. Andrew Jones denies murdering Michael O'Leary, and the trial continues.
Research by BBC Wales has found some people with poor mental health are going hungry during the coronavirus pandemic because they're too anxious to leave home to buy food. It comes amid warnings of a rise in demand for mental health services through the winter. Our reporter Jordan Davis has more.
Rhiannon is a volunteer with a mental health charity. But during the pandemic, she's noticed her anxiety increase.
I feel a lot better when I'm home because I know no one's going to get me and nothing is going to get me either.
And that anxiety has sometimes prevented her leaving home to buy food, even when she's hungry.
If I decide to go to the shop that I really need to get something, I'll build myself up to go out to the shop and getting that item that I'm looking for. Or I'll think, I don't feel like going out today, I'll go out tomorrow, and I keep keeping it off.
And Rhiannon isn't alone in feeling anxious at the moment. Things like this help her. It's gardening, but also prescribed therapy, run by the charity Growing Space.
I think it's had a massive effect on everyone's mental health, to be honest. Not one person hasn't suffered with the situation.
Alex has also felt anxious and knows others who are suffering even more.
I think it's driven them mad, really, to be honest, 'cause they just can't see their friends or do anything. You know, they're just still stuck in exactly the same position, even though things have eased.
It comes as a senior mental health manager at an Iron Bevan Health Board says there's been an increase in crisis referrals in the last month, although this can be for a variety of reasons. But the Health Board is seeing more anxiety and they're expecting a surge in mental health referrals over the winter.
We've noticed quite a big increase in crisis referrals, people who are socially isolated and feeling quite depressed as a result of that. And I think, you know, the anxiety levels in the general public have gone up. So we're seeing more referrals at a primary care level for things like anxiety management.
The Health Board says it's coping well now and is trying to put measures in place for the winter. Charities like Growing Space are delivering food and medicine. They say some people would starve themselves because they've been too scared to go out and buy food. Rhiannon, like many people, has struggled during the pandemic, and doctors expect more people to come forward over the next few months.
Jordan Davis reporting there. Sport now, and there was disappointment for Geraint Thomas as he narrowly missed out on a medal in the time trial at the Road World Championships in Italy. The former Tour de France winner was leading for much of the event, but eventually finished fourth. He'll be competing next in the Giro d'Italia, which begins next weekend.
Today I was riding completely blind, and but yeah, the legs seem pretty good. Pace judgment isn't too bad, really, I guess, considering. So, but yeah, the TTs are obviously important in the Giro, so yeah, it's looking good for that.
Well, it's the end of an era for us here at BBC Cymru Wales Broadcasting House in Llandaff in Cardiff, which has been the home of Wales Today for decades. From Monday, we'll be broadcasting from our new home in the heart of the capital. But these studios, well, they do have quite a history. Here's Lucy Owen.
A house for broadcasting. The work began in February of 1963.
The building would bring together BBC Wales's radio, television and news departments under one roof for the first time. It was officially opened in 1967.
And now the news headlines for St David's Day. This afternoon, the Princess Margaret opened the BBC's new headquarters in Wales, Broadcasting House, Llandaff.
I wish all who work here happiness for themselves and for the public which they serve.
The concert studio is one of the finest features of Broadcasting House.
The BBC Welsh Orchestra, as it was known then, now had its own purpose-built facility.
The stone walls here, as elsewhere in Broadcasting House, are faced with pebbles from the River Taff.
And they've stood the test of time. Now, this corridor leads down to C2, which is the Wales Today news studio.
C2, BBC Wales's new colour television studio, is a 4-camera studio. The final script check for Wales Today.
Over the years, it's seen plenty of different sets and lots of different presenters.
It's certainly been quite a day for us here at the BBC.
No, being told to forget it.
The argument isn't really about devolution at all.
With the time at nearly 10 to 6, let's look at the local news of Wales.
Welsh farmers have failed in their bid to buy back the collapsed farmers' cooperative.
British coal dropped a bombshell today.
Lives could be endangered.
Wales's first case of bird flu has been confirmed.
A man has been given a life sentence following an armed robbery on a supermarket in Newport while dressed as a witch.
It really was state-of-the-art, as the art then was. In many ways, it was the dawn of a new age for broadcasting in Wales. Now, if you have a dawn, you have to have a sunset.
I consider it to be a real privilege, actually, to have worked in this building. I think also the way in which we're all having to work differently these days demonstrates that if you're working with really great, creative, talented people, they'll find a way to make the best possible programmes.
But now it's time for a new beginning, here at Central Square, in the heart of the capital. In state-of-the-art facilities, with the aim of delivering the best services for our audience, in a building which welcomes everyone.
What we have here are technology, facilities, studios, everything that you need for a modern broadcaster to be able to do its best creative work for the next 20 or 30 years. More than that, I hope the audience see that benefit immediately on screen.
The site in Llandaff will now be developed for housing. But for many of you, and for us, the programmes broadcast from this building will live long in the memory.
Wales will have an assembly.
What can I say, Peter? Wel, croeso.
Sit down, love. I'll get you a cup of tea.
Hello, Ruth Jones. Da bochi.
We hope with affection.
Lucio in there taking a look back at the history of this iconic building. Well, there's been some beautiful sunshine out there today, Benaz. Is it going to last the weekend is the question?
Yes, it is going to last into the weekend, and we'll lose the wind by the time we get to Sunday as well. But this was the skies today over Llandaff today for the last day of full broadcasting from this beautiful building. And much of Wales did see that sunshine as well, but we've had a few showers lurking around, which I'll get to in a moment. Not a bad day on Anglesey either. We had some sunshine to start today, and then the showers came in. So if you take a look at the radar, you can see those showers just building across western fringes, but further inland the best of the sunshine and drier conditions as well. So what can we expect tomorrow? We can expect more in the way of sunshine, fewer showers, but it will be on the cool side, all thanks to the northerly winds. So this evening we do still have some showers lurking around. They'll tend to fizzle out as we go into early hours of tomorrow morning. Clear skies developing for many, and it will be a chilly night with the temperatures tonight 4 to about 7 Celsius. If the winds were lighter, they would get lower than that. Now tomorrow we do have high pressure in charge of our weather, blocking these weather systems from coming in, but we are in a northerly flow, so you'll certainly feel it as you head out, but it should be a beautiful day for many as long as you have that extra layer. So a chilly start to the day. Plenty of sparkly sunshine as we head into the afternoon. Perhaps the odd isolated shower in the west, but I think most of us getting away with a dry day. Temperatures 12 to 15 Celsius. And then once the sun sets, it will turn rather chilly underneath the clear skies into early hours of tomorrow morning. But the winds will ease off as we head into Sunday. Temperatures still on the chilly side. Lows around 4 to about 8 Celsius. I think Sunday probably the best day of the weekend. We can look forward to lots of sunshine, much lighter winds, and the temperatures on the rise, getting up to about 17 Celsius across the southeast. So it will feel pleasant in the sunshine, and if you can find shelter from the breeze, not doing too bad for Wrexham either, up to about 13 Celsius. So we are losing this cooler air as we head into next week. Much milder air taking charge of our weather, but with the milder air comes the unsettled conditions as well. So here we are on Monday, a bit more cloud around, perhaps a few showers, limited amounts of brightness for the start of next week as well. And the breeze, well, light to moderate and coming from a southwesterly direction. The temperatures up, though, for everybody, up to about 18 Celsius. But it is looking a bit more changeable as we go into next week. Enjoy the weekend sunshine, and bye and see you in the new studios.
Thanks, Bennett. Our main story again tonight, and Cardiff and Swansea will be in lockdown by the end of the weekend. It follows a continuing rise in coronavirus cases. Parts of Llandaff will also face restrictions from tomorrow evening. Around 1.5 million people in Wales will soon be under lockdown. That's roughly half the population. And that is our last Wales Today evening news programme from Broadcasting House here in Llandaff. We look forward to welcoming you to our new studio in Central Square on Monday. I'll be back at 10:30, but for now, hwyl fawr. Bye-bye.